We're becoming more of a global community rather than our individual cultures from this country or that country. There's a lot more fluidity. And so this is a perfect example of how the collective at large is also evolving just as the individual is, because it is all scalar in nature. And human design is a way in which we can measure that, and
Yeah.
we can take note of all of these different parts of our history, and that we don't discount them by any means. We simply incorporate them into our greater understanding of our future.
I am super excited to be able to interview this young lady, ZenJen Pinkstone. Jen, and she is somebody that I came across. I don't know, maybe it was a couple years ago, Jen. I'm not quite sure time wise, maybe about a year and a half ago. And you were on the Leak Project. It's a wonderful podcast. I love watching that. And you were sharing about human design, which had never crossed my path before. And it really resonated with me. And at that point, I think you had some sort of an offering, which was like this mystery class. And I didn't even know that much about it, but I'm like, my essence was calling me to say, I got to sign up for that. So since then, I've been kind of involved with just in conversation with you. I know you were connected or following me while I was doing my big bike trip, but I've been through some of your other classes and other offerings that you do. And so I wanted to bring you on today, basically, because there's a lot of people out there in my audience, they don't even know what human design is. So can you start off just by give us a little introduction about maybe about you and your background, but start with that question like what is human design, and why should anybody be interested in it? I guess go ahead, Jen.
Thank you so much, Ron. That's such an awesome introduction. And you're right. Like we crossed each other's paths in very synchronistic ways. And it was in divine timing. And to answer your question in a short form, like the short answer of what is human design for me is something of a Rosetta Stone. And for those who don't know about what the Rosetta Stone represents, I'm not going to get into the historical faction of it. I come with my background in anthropology and history, and I majored in religion at one point in time. I've kind of hopped from one lily pad to another, so to speak, kind of experiencing the full spectrum of my human experience. But the Rosetta Stone was a really nifty little tool that had multiple different languages written on the same tablet that gave us a cross-reference point between different languages that what it did was it expounded clarity, almost like a master key code, if you will,
Mm.
to decipher and decode this new language, and not only a new language that we didn't understand yet, which we didn't have human design until it was gifted to humanity by a mysterious voice in 1987, very recently. But what it did was it also expanded our understanding and our comprehension of these very old other languages that we thought we fully understood, but it really blew the door wide open on those as well, so that it just expanded our understanding, not just about the energy of the universe, but the energy of our integral individual selves and what energies govern each individual in the spectrum and in the context of the universe at large, and on a scalar projection, as well as down to the integral facets and features of our building block components like DNA. And it's just fascinating. It's something that has connected the dots between all of my different intrigues and every different facet of my exploration and my personal studies. And it serves as like a master key, like a skeleton key that will open any door because it touches everything, whether we're talking history or energy work,
Mhm.
or even things like futuristic perspectives of where we're going with AI and DNA understandings of the codon structures. So that is human design in a nutshell, in the Cliff Notes version, if you will.
Well, thank you. And yeah, and so if you can also like tell us a little bit about, because again, I don't want to mess this up, but it is a combination in a way of, I guess, astrology. It's taking the data of what's unique to us, which is our birth date, our birth time, our place where we were born, so time and space signature
Yes,
that we
exactly.
came in with. But it doesn't. I guess tell us about what other modalities I guess that are combined with it, because I know it's astrology, but I know there's other things in there too.
Sure, sure. Yes, astrology is a very key component. Like I said, it takes these other languages. That's a metaphor, so to
Mhm.
speak, the Rosetta Stone of understanding. But astrology, among others, like the I Ching of ancient China, the
Yeah.
hexagrams, that ancient divination system that has been around for thousands of years. What we actually found out after human design was actually enacted and initiated into the consciousness of human understanding, what we found is that there's the same number of codons in the DNA structure as there are in the I Ching, the 64 ways. There are 64 codon structures, and these
Wow.
match apples to apples with this system that human design already had purported was an integral process of understanding this greater system. It also incorporates the ancient tenets of Kabbalism,
Mhm.
such as the tree of life and the structure by which these channels move energy not only through the universe, so to speak, but through our bodies, which we know is in a scalar way a universe in and of itself.
Mhm.
And it incorporates the ancient chakra system of the Indus River Valley. Um, this is where the evolutionary perspective kind of gets interwoven, because the chakra system and our the um the unified facet of how this system aligns with the meridian of the body is in an active state of evolution. This is human design prophecy,
Mhm.
and it is what actually incited a new kind of being that is an we'll get on to that later. That is the
Yeah.
projectors. And I know that that is something of great interest to yourself, being a projector as you
Yeah.
are. But this introduced a new kind of being that processes energy in an entirely different way than we have done so throughout human history. The chakra system you could look at as kind of a prototype of that previous way. Like, this is how our ancestors have how they were designed. But we have been purported to be this we're in a an active state of evolution, and
Mhm.
we right now as human beings are in a transitory state where we are not exactly embodiments of what we will one day become,
Mhm.
but we are not anymore what we have been thus far for the foreseeable changes through human history. We're in this transitory in between state, and this is why it was so timely for human design to be gifted to humanity, to really take in all of these different philosophies that came from all over the world and to marry them together in
Mm,
a sequencing that makes sense because we know, you and I know, and many people can feel in their bodies how true many of these aspects are, but they're only pieces of the puzzle.
mm,
They're simply facets of a much bigger picture, if you will.
yeah,
And this is it coming to us in a very timely way whenever the globalization of humanity, we're becoming more of a global community rather
mm,
than our individual cultures from this country or that country. There's a lot more fluidity. And so this is a perfect example of how the collective at large is also evolving just as the individual is, because it is all scalar in nature. And human design is a way in which we can measure that, and
yeah.
we can take note of all of these different parts of our history, and that we don't discount them by any means. We simply incorporate them into our greater understanding of our future.
Nicely said. Yeah, and I agree with you. Everything is always changing. Everything's always evolving. So where we were yesterday and where we'll be tomorrow, individually and collectively, is always in movement. And yet, one of the things that I like, what I always love to do is I'd like to have help people find purpose, right? My book, Getting Unstuck, was basically to help people get clarity. Without clarity, you feel lost within the world. And if you would look at the principles of self-empowerment, is number one, know thyself. Well, how do you know yourself when you're stuck in the confusion of what you thought you should be, or relative to what your parents told you you should be, or maybe your high school guidance counselor, or and you look at how many people change their major and like they go in different directions. We all do, right? And it's that process of self-discovery, and it's a reflection or comparison to the outside world. When we start to bring ourselves to the inside world, I think it's partly self-realization comes through intuition, but also comes through some of these other more esoteric systems. And that's why I like human design, because honestly, when I looked at my own chart, I kind of like there's so many things that I agreed with. I'm like, well, that makes sense. And I don't think I saw those clearly in numerology or human or in astrology alone. I like, and I know we're probably going to go there more, but I like when I discovered that I was a projector. And I know that there's these different aura types or whatever energy types, and there's a lot more to human design than just that. But when I realized, oh, I'm a projector, and I read the strategy, I think it is like wait for the invitation.
Hmm.
And then I looked at my life. I was like, well, that's kind of how all my big opportunities evolved. They were invitations. And no matter how much I tried to, you know, force myself into whether it was a job position or selling myself or whatever, not that those things are wrong. I realized that the major things in my life came through an invitation. And if I looked at the energy around those invitations, I realized that they were actually perfect. They were in alignment with who I am. So if you can share maybe a little bit more about, I know it's more than just a chart. It's more than just you know, there's a lot of information there. But those particular energy types, am I saying that right? Is it energy types?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They're aura types
Aura
is how
types.
we, and what's awesome about the aura types, Ron, is that this was a fashioning or rather an organizing way that the founder of human design, or rather I like to look at him as the receiver of human design.
Yep.
It was given to him. This was a system that was given to him by a mysterious voice that visited him for 8 days and nights. And it, sat him down and said, "Are you ready to work?" and put before him various texts, and also gave him a validation from the perspective of interaction with another human being. And he was able to actually see the crystals of consciousness as they reside in every human being. And I think this is where you're getting at.
Yeah.
And that this creates a different aura type. And he fashioned these aura types. These were not given to him by the voice. He, in his mind that was chosen to analyze this information, he was able to organize these different compilations of energy and how it is that they show up in an individual human. He was able to derive from that four basic types, some with subtypes,
Yeah.
that these kinds of energy assortments and assemblings create different aura types. And the most prevalent aura type on planet Earth is my aura type, that of a generator.
Hmm.
This is it comprises approximately 70% of human beings. There is a manifesting generator, there is an emotional generator. These are the different subtypes. But then the second aura type that you're referring to is what you are, which is a projector.
Hmm.
And this has a generator myself has an enveloping aura. And I want you to imagine, everyone watching this with us, to imagine kind of like a big energetic bear hug. We have this way of enveloping other aura types and bringing them closer in and making them feel loved, making them feel seen. This is why we comprise 70% of the population, because there is this unison that is created by that energetic phenomena. You can see the projectors, like yourself, are the most recently occurring aura type. These did not exist prior to 1781,
Hmm.
when there was a split of, they call it the solar plexus split. This is referencing that evolution of the energy bodies in the human body, from that straight up and down meridian. And we'll look at a chart here in a moment to show that visual. But the projector has a penetrating aura, where you can actually penetrate into and see deeply into other human beings, and kind of what comprises them, and what makes them tick, and their essence. You have this way of seeing individuals in on a whole new level that wasn't available to us prior to 1781. And
Interesting.
you can see why my particular strategy, defined as a generator, would be to respond. I am here to respond to my outer environment, and that has the potential to bring things towards me that are meant for me, and to have things kind of circumambulate away from me that are not meant for me. And you, with the penetrating aura,
Mhm.
Ron, have this. I mean, we talked about this on a previous podcast, that if you simply go around initiating things,
Hmm.
that it's going to be taken differently by a lot of different kinds of people, especially with your penetrating aura. That is the energetic experience that others have in your vicinity, because that is what your energy brings, and it is incredibly powerful. And some might feel rather, I don't want to, I don't want to say violated. That seems so
Yeah.
harsh, but you can see how waiting for the permission to ask to have someone like yourself see deeply into them. It's been surmised that projectors are kind of this new generation of seers, and a new generation of extrasensory experiencers, in this way
Mhm.
that reflectors, the third of the four types, had kind of served as this, in throughout human history. The reflectors with all open centers,
Mhm.
they have no defined energy centers in their body. Their strategy is to sample energy because they will be very influenced and impacted by every energy type, whether it is the enveloping energy of the generator, the
Mm.
penetrating energy of the projector, or the repelling energy of the manifester. That's the fourth type. The reflectors will be very impacted by all of these different auras, and they will, because they are so open, they have kind of this potential to embody and mirror back what it is that is in their midst, kind of like a mirror, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
um a manifester is the fourth type with their repelling aura, and they're quite interesting as well. They tend to be lone wolves on an
Mm.
individual level. They rub a lot of people the wrong way. With their repelling aura, it pushes people away, like quite literally. But these are your dictators. They are your leaders. They
Yep.
are in human history. I always like to look at the human history perspective because, as you mentioned, when we learn our human design, it gives us this retrospective lens by which to view our life through, and everything that we've encountered thus far. It shines this light of clarity
Mm.
on our personal lives in this way that nothing else. I've not found anything else that does the same. And in that clarity that it shines of, oh, this is why this happened, right? So too can we see in human history on the collective level that whenever we look at manifestors throughout human history, these are your chiefs in your fiefdoms. They are
Mhm.
your kings, and they are those who managed and oftentimes owned the serfdoms. They represent between 9 and 10% of the human population.
Okay.
And for most of human history, this is verified that, it was most of the human population was enslaved by manifestors. And manifestors are still amongst us today. You can look at the charts of many who are in power in very big ways, and
Mm.
their charts are representative of a manifestor repelling aura. They command the attention of a very large population of a room, but on an individual level, there's not many that are close to them.
Ah.
And that is the projectors like yourself, we know a lot less about,
Yep.
just simply because you haven't been around for very long. But there's quite a few projectors that have been very influential. And I sent you a list of those people at one point, I
I
believe. And
remember that. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, like it's cool to really imagine these different aura types and
Yeah.
to see them play out in our celebrities, in our world leaders, and just in people that are close to us also.
Sure. And yeah, and I know it's more than just the aura types. It gets down into the nitty-gritty of everything regarding the chart that you had shared with me too. But I like starting there only because when I discovered that, it was comforting.
Hmm.
It gave me personal clarity on how to make decisions in my life. It made me feel okay when things were a certain way. It's like the discovery, and I think I've shared with this before, is like if everybody in the world is riding a bike and I've suddenly realized in a canoe, I should be paddling. And so that I like. And then, getting into the other aspects of the chart, then from there, as I started to look at those and started to read about those, that's where I really said, aha, that makes sense too. Which brings me back to that topic of self-empowerment. I think the more clarity you have around the nuances of your patterning, that is your soul expression, in a human body, but that true authentic you start to see, oh, that makes sense. And I am okay. I'm not going crazy. And yet we all have, these things, what we want to call them, our superpowers or our innate gifts or our ways of being, and not only on an individual basis, but as you had shared with me, when you're working with another person, that which gets really interesting. I think you shared a little bit about how there's a dynamic between a group, there's a dynamic between just two people, you know, that element right there. I'm sure when there's committees that form, or organizations that have like a leadership council or whatever, that would be real interesting to see how everybody who comes, and there's no accident in the world, right? Everybody who shows up together, there's a reason behind it. But I bet you the clarity of relationship between human design profiles is probably really interesting.
Oh, it's like I said, it touches every facet of our individual human lives. And even if you're not a history buff like myself, even if you just want to look at the current events of today, like I can't watch the news or a documentary without popping up someone's human design body graph just to
Yeah.
get perspective on what energy they're bringing to the table. I mean, there is the notion of conditioning that has to be taken into account, and that is one of the biggest factors that is referenced in human design studies. But you're absolutely right in whether you're talking about like a romantic relationship and who it is that you are intending to marry or you've had a relationship with for 20 something years, or with your own children, or
Mm,
with your coworkers. Like
yeah.
we all have had that person that it's like, man, no matter what I do or how it is I attempt to function in the same vicinity with this person, it just never lands and it doesn't ever, there's always something askew, there's always something off, you know?
Mm,
I can tell you that if you look at their human design features and facets of what makes up their energetic signature as a human being, and then you cross compare it to yours with a bit of understanding of this system, you're going to have a lot of light shine and you're going to be like, okay, that's not something I did. That's just what it is, you know? And there's
sure.
nothing to be feeling guilty or shameful about it. And then there's other people like you and I,
Yeah.
Ron, that whenever we get together, the sparks are just flying and the ideas are flowing. And it's just like so effortless that we
Yeah.
get on this level of discussion that you don't achieve that with every person that you come into contact with. And there's good reason for that too. And I'd love to show your audience our connection chart in the
Yeah.
perspective of your chart versus, or not versus, but your chart as compared to my chart in the different kinds of energies that we each bring to the table individually.
That would be great. Actually, I enabled the sharing feature, so yeah, if you could do that,
Yes, of
it's
course.
this would be cool.
First, yeah, it's I've loved looking at our charts together during our work together. It's been really illuminating you as an emotional projector. We'll look at yours first. You
Okay.
can see here what makes you a projector specifically is that you don't have this particular center filled in or defined. What makes definition in a chart is having a complete channel. You see these different numbers
Yeah.
wherever like 29 and 46, like these would connect to create a specific channel. Gate 29, the numbers each have a gate name. And some of these names have kind of like a negative connotation. I know a lot of human design analysts have them their own names. I kind of
Hmm.
like to keep it simplistic and focused on the foundations. But like for instance, if someone in your vicinity comes with their gate 46, the gate of pushing upwards, and it connects with your defined gate, gate 29, the abysmal, you're going to have a complete channel between these two centers, the identity center and the sacral center. You don't have this particular center defined. And because you don't have one of the motor centers connected by a complete channel to your throat, giving you a motorized throat, you're not a manifester. And so you automatically fall into the category of projector because you do have some centers defined. If you had no centers defined, you would be a reflector, like we had mentioned. You can
Hmm.
see, though, in my chart, I do have this center defined. 70% of us do, and we are the generators of planet Earth. And you can see that I have almost complete opposite centers in my definition in my chart. And if you look at what is called a connection chart, where I'm kind of a Captain Planet, child of the 90s fan. When our powers combine, I don't know if you've ever watched that show, but that's what
Yeah.
it conjures for me. When our powers combine, this is what you get. You get complete definition in the
Cool.
entire body graph, which that kind of lends the understanding and the explanation as to why it is that both of us get access, temporary access to these energy centers that we don't always have as individuals. And so you can see the potential that this brings for hiring, like you said, employees for a business or appointing members of a committee. You want to have as much access, all of the members involved in the collaboration, whether that is a relationship between two people
Hmm.
or if it is like a group dynamic, that you want everyone to have as much access to these different centers as possible, because that is what's going to add that it's going to create that flow state where things flow more smoothly, because these centers in the human body they're meant to be used. This is a
Yeah.
technology that we haven't been aware of for very long. For a lot of our human history that we have record of, we've been very centered in the ajna awareness, or the awareness of the mind. We use the mind for deliberation and problem solving, when in fact we are evolving into a state where we need to be using the energy centers of our entire body in order to make the best decisions that are most serving to our highest good. And I think those of us like yourself, like myself, who have done an iota of self development have realized that there is great value in these intuitive, extrasensory insights that we receive that have nothing to do with how much we can think about something, right? How much we can
Sure.
deliberate something with our mind. That's a powerful tool in and of itself, but we have many powerful tools throughout our body, and many of them are enacted when we are in the vicinity of other people with other activations that are dormant within us for the
Ah,
time that we are not in that midst of that energy that activates it within us.
so I just had a thought, okay, relative to that, and maybe you could tell me because obviously my throat chakra is open. So, but I'm a speaker.
Yes.
But then again, I have some sense of feeling the audience, I guess, if that's a word or
Oh, of course
makes
it
sense.
is. Of course.
So with all that being said, you just shared the fact that, and I didn't realize this, but you just shared the fact that when you come in contact with other people, that might help bring out or initiate something else within you. So maybe that's the reason why, because I used to look at my chart and think, well, is there something wrong here? Because I've got an open shot throat chakra, but I'm a speaker. So,
Right.
but yeah, maybe it's because I have audience members that kind of bring that out in me. I don't know.
You know what's something interesting about our definitions and our openness, Ron, is that we think that, oh, well, if it's open, we don't have that.
Yeah,
Every single person in the world has access to every single one of these energies. It's just a matter of whether or not they have consistent access to it or inconsistent access. And for that reason, our openness is actually the places that we are open to receive more wisdom from outside of ourselves. And so these are the spaces of energy that whenever everyone first learns about human design, they want to know about their definitions, right? They're like, what am I? Like
yeah,
what is it that I am? And then so they're because of the duality of the nature of our brain, we're thinking that, well, if I am that, I am not this. And it couldn't be further from the truth. There are so many singers and speakers with open throat centers because this is their life's work and it is the space in which they are designed to allow this let's call it a movement of energy through them from outside of themselves because we are all here to derive wisdom from the experience of being human. What
yeah,
we bring with our definitions, what's really interesting about that is, yes, it is what we innately bring to the table and consistently we offer this energetic transference to others, especially those who don't have those definitions.
mhm.
But we almost don't even notice that we are this because we're like inside of that bubble. Does that make sense?
That does
Like
make sense.
we
Yeah,
we don't even notice that like I don't even notice that I have this defined identity center, which is actually more about direction. I always just am moving in a specific direction. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do anything, but it's actually not something that I'm here to learn deeply about. What I'm here to learn is about my open spleen, my center of intuition, my open
mhm.
solar plexus, my center of emotional wave experience, my open root center, the work that I'm here to do. These are the places that I'm here to grow into to become the human being that I'm really meant to be. And so, your open throat center, I want you to really shift your perspective in that way. You are here to be a speaker, obviously, because
Yeah,
I mean, that's where you've arrived. It's where you came from, and it's where you're going. Obviously, there's this sense of destiny and purpose that is around that, and it makes perfect sense that you would receive energy from your audience that would activate your throat center in those moments that you are up on stage speaking in front of a crowd. Perfect sense.
nice. Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that because obviously, I think that probably happens to a lot of people when they look at their human design chart. They're confused,
Of
right?
course.
They get
Yes.
questions and stuff. But yeah, but I think that explains it really, really well.
Yeah, it's all about, I mean, we all have something that we're bringing to the table that, we whether you believe in reincarnation, human design has really it throws its hat in the ring in a very significant way with respect to the lives that we've led before. It has a deliberation on that, but it also has this essence that we are this really unique human being that
Mhm.
will never exist again. Because the human being as an individual is comprised of multiple different facets. There's very few that will disagree with that. And whenever we come together in this body
Mhm.
that is created in utero, and that's something that human design seeks to explore and explain in ways that astrology doesn't. That it kind of takes each one of these modalities and philosophies and understandings of how energy works into this whole new level and whole, like it takes it a step further
Mhm.
so that we can see how the human body is formed in utero And yet the moment that we are born, we are imprinted with this unique form of information. And whenever we bring this essence of who it is that we are from other lifetimes into this body that will never exist again, we get to experience ourselves and this energy in a way that will never really be incarnated ever again. And so that's really special for every person to explore about themselves and about those who are closest to them.
Nice. And yeah, so I look at human beings like being puzzle pieces, yet we make this grand, beautiful picture of a complete puzzle.
Mm,
And the more that we understand and I would say embrace and internalize and accept, or that's where the self-acceptance is self-love, basically. But just knowing that we're divinely perfect, not from a comparison of having to be like somebody else, although we can
mm,
receive inspiration from somebody else, but we're never a clone, we're never a carbon copy. But the more a person understands, I think that's part of the life journey because I would say everybody, including myself, as a child, as a teen, going through life, we all have these aha moments and we all have things that I think enrich us in a deeper level of understanding ourselves. And as well as being able to, I mean, I came across human design late in life, but it was probably the perfect timing.
yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and if you also talked a little bit, you used the word conditioning, right? And that's a where I'm starting to hear that word more common in conversation. We're being kind of like deconditioned at this moment, which in a way to me also is almost like the word awakening, right? We're awakening, but what are we awakening from? A, a false sense of beliefs around maybe the world or ourself, right?
Mm.
Which was conditioned. And you shared something before about it takes, I think you said 7 years, or I can't remember. I don't want to put words
This
in your
is
mouth, but
something that
yeah,
Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design, formerly known as Alan Krakauer,
okay.
of, I believe, Alberta, Canada. He was the receiver, i.e., the founder of human design. This was something that he surmised that 7 years, as soon as one learns about human design, that it takes 7 years to decondition from the sequences prior that we were operating from. And you brought up something truly interesting that I'd like to shed some light on right now during our last conversation about that on my podcast, that we are moving in this really in an accelerated fashion in this matrices of expression and experience. And at the time that human design was received by Ra Uru Hu, things were set in a certain standard of way that we were not moving at the accelerated rate with AI and technology. And, the disbursement of information was not as great, certainly in
Hmm.
1987, as it is now in 2025. And so, why is it then, if things at the collective level are moving at such an accelerated rate, and if everything is, as I believe, it is scalar in nature, why then would the individual not be subjected to that accelerated rate? I don't believe, like
Mm.
you planted this seed in my mind, that 7 years is necessarily the amount of time required to decondition from things. I believe people are deconditioning at an accelerated rate now, and it is very painful. It can be very overwhelming and disorienting at times. I believe that we are moving in every way that you can comprehend and conceive of in our evolution. Certainly, as we enter a new global cycle, that there are different global cycles that we enter into that will set the theme of the energetic signatures of that age, and we enter into these approximately every 400 plus years,
Mhm.
and we're about to dawn on a brand new one called we are entering into the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And this is shape shifting humans at the individual level at an astronomical rate. And I do believe that what you said is true. 7 years is not what is required to decondition at this point in time. We're moving at this rate and this speed that's unprecedented to our ancestry. And that as soon as we learn about human design and we really dive deeply into these energetic signatures, I mean, I can't say how long it will take. I believe we're deconditioning for the rest of our lives. But what he said was that in order to live your design and strategy, 7 years was required. I believe that a whole lot less time is required at this
Yeah,
juncture that we find ourselves.
I agree too, because I could see that within conversations I'm having with people. People that I've known for a while, the conversations have shifted. The people that are even showing up at some of my talks and stuff, I'm just noticing that element of some level of conscious awakening
Mm.
within their individual life. Of course, some people are going through some very difficult times at this moment.
Oh,
But
yes.
on the other end of that, it's kind of getting them opened up a little bit more to say, how can I serve in this world? How can I shine my light in my own unique way? How can I do the things that not only embody greater joy for me, peace of mind, or whatever? How can I use my own gifts so I can make a difference? So these conversations are coming out in people. So I agree that the deconditioning acceleration is probably happening. So yeah, very cool.
And I mean, conditioning is just defined as everything that we received from childhood. Children are more easily conditioned than adults because of the pliability of their minds and their bodies. They're in a
Yeah.
state of transition themselves, right? And we are in a state of transition more so now than any of our ancestors were subjected to. And so that makes sense why if we are more easily conditioned now, we are also more easily deconditioned is the point that I'm going with there.
Yep, I agree. So a lot of whether you look at religion was a big one because religion in a way kind of put us in taught us some truth, but at the same time almost made us feel disempowered. Uh,
Religion was a very defining attribute of the cross of planning, which is the global cycle that we are now exiting. I kind of look at the cross of planning as kind of like the big bureaucratic red tape
yeah,
like cycle where we put things into categories. And that was very heightening of our awareness and of our consciousness in huge ways. We categorized ourselves in cultures and through institutions and identities in during this global cycle that was not possible in the previous global cycles that preceded that, right? But we have built up these institutions in it to such great levels we're starting to see them crumble. And you can see this at the political level, at the economic level. You can see it at the as far as the different identities across like lines between boundaries of countries even, right? We're
yeah,
seeing the crumblings of a lot of these identities and structures that were built during the cross of planning. And what we're entering into is out of the collective circuitry of the cross of planning, we're entering into a individualized circuitry where we are going to be looking more inward at our own individual facets and the possibilities from within oneself. This is going to be a big
right.
shift in focus that we're already kind of feeling the
Mhm.
essence kind of entering our awareness. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would also say that instead of blindly giving our power away to the outside authority, it's coming back to the inner self.
I
and
love
get
that.
getting a deeper sense of clarity. Not that our outer world, I mean, in many ways, our outer world is a reflection of what's going on inside, but not that the outer world should be feared by no means, but it's getting a sense of groundedness within the self to be able to embrace life, all of it in such a beautiful way. So, well, Jen, this has been a great conversation. I'm going to have you on again because there's some deeper questions. And I'm hoping that anybody watching this can comment and maybe ask questions because that'll bring Jen back on because there will be obviously other podcasts, Jen, that we'll do together. And before we adjourn, though, I want to, is there anything you'd like to share, like your website or anything that you're currently doing or offering, or how do people find out about you?
Oh, I loved meeting with you today, Ron. This was so illuminating and it's breathing new life into my perspective as we speak. And I just love meeting with you and to cross connect our energy sequences. There's always amazing explorations that it leaves me feeling so energized. I love it. And thank you for tuning in to us today. If anyone who was part of this energetic exchange between Ron and I would like to follow me over to my platform on YouTube, you can find me at ZenJen Connections on YouTube. That's my handlebar. And I'll provide that link for those who would like to follow those breadcrumbs and, continue their own explorations of human design from my unique perspective of the system.
Awesome. Well, Jen, thank you so much. And till next time, we'll stay connected. And yeah, I'll have to have you come on again sometime, okay?
Thank you, Ron. It's been such a pleasure.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.